You were trapped inside the Colombian cartel. No way out. It's the 38th day since your extraction point burned. Not compromised. Burned. As in, the safe house in Medellin where your handler was supposed to be is now a blackened shell on a street that smells like wet ash and gasoline, and the 2 DEA agents who were supposed to be inside it are in the American embassy in Bogota with injuries that nobody in the official communications will specify. You know this because a man named Cesar told you. Cesar is the logistics director of the Cordoba network, the organization you have spent 11 months infiltrating. He is not a cruel man. He told you about the safe house the morning after it happened, over coffee, the way a man shares a piece of news he thinks you should have. He watched your face while he told you. You gave him nothing. 11 months of being someone else teaches you certain things. One of them is how to receive information that could kill you and produce a face that contains none of that. What Cesar gave you with the information, whether he intended to or not, was a message underneath the message. He knows you have a thread running somewhere outside this organization. He may not know it runs to a federal building in Bogota, but he knows the thread exists, and he is telling you that the thread has been cut, and he is watching to see whether you already knew. You didn't already know. That is the difference between a warning and a threat. Cesar was warning you. The warning means one of two things. Either Cesar is testing you, in which case the correct response is to look confused and ask questions. Or Cesar, for reasons you do not yet understand, is trying to help you, in which case the correct response is the same. You look confused. You ask questions. 38 days later you are still inside the Cordoba network with no extraction protocol, no handler contact, 11 months of intelligence that cannot reach anyone who can act on it, and a man named Cesar who knows more than he should. To understand how you survive the next 60 days, you have to understand the 11 months that came before them. 13 months before the ash. You are 37 years old. 10 years with the DEA, the last 5 in the Bogota country office working the Andean cocaine supply chain. You have run informants in 3 departments, coordinated with the Colombian National Police on 2 major seizures, testified before a Senate subcommittee on cartel financing. You know Colombia the way a surgeon knows a specific patient, the anatomy in detail, the history of what has been tried before, the specific places where the tissue does not respond to standard treatment. The Cordoba network is one of those places. It is not a cartel in the traditional sense. It is a financing and logistics organization, the layer between coca production in the rural departments and the international distribution networks that move the product into Europe and the United States. The Cordoba network does not grow coca. It does not move product directly. It finances the operations that do, manages the cash flows that result, and provides the logistical intelligence that allows the supply chain to route around interdiction. It is, in the vocabulary of criminal enterprise, a bank and a consulting firm. The man who runs it is Andres Cordoba, 58 years old. Economist by training, University of the Andes, 1989. He has been financing narcotics operations for 23 years. He has been investigated 6 times and never charged. The investigations collapse because Cordoba operates with a layer of distance from every transaction. The money moves through legitimate channels. The decisions are made in rooms without recording devices. The people who could testify are either deeply loyal or not available to testify. Your country attaché, a career officer named Bishop, puts Cordoba's file on the table. She says, 6 investigations, 0 charges. The Colombian prosecutors are not incompetent. Cordoba is genuinely difficult to touch. What he does looks like legitimate finance until you know where to look, and by the time you know where to look, the transaction has moved 3 times. She slides a second folder across. She says, the entry point is a mid-level financial analyst in the network. A man named Palomino who manages relationships with the legitimate front companies that process the cash. He recruits independent financial consultants periodically for specific project work, legitimately structured engagements that are, in reality, components of the laundering operation. You say, my cover is a financial consultant. She says, your cover is a financial consultant with a specific expertise that Palomino's operation currently needs. International structuring, how to move money across jurisdictions in ways that avoid FATF reporting triggers. It's a technical skill. We have been building the cover for 4 months with a genuine financial background that will hold against professional scrutiny. You say, what's the extraction protocol? She says, handler in Medellin. Weekly contact. Safe house on Calle 33. If contact breaks for more than 72 hours, you activate the secondary and we pull you within 48 hours. The secondary protocol is a specific advertisement posted to a classified financial services website, a job listing for a risk analyst position with a description that contains, in the second paragraph, a sequence of words that means extract immediately. You memorize it. You memorize it because Bishop says, "We have had 2 previous insertion attempts into the Cordoba network. Both were burned within 60 days. We do not know how. We believe Cordoba has either a law enforcement source or a technical capability we have not identified. Assume your communications are monitored from day 1. Assume your communications are monitored from day 1. You carry that sentence into the insertion. It turns out to be exactly right and not nearly sufficient. Sebastián Mora. Your cover name is Sebastián Mora. 38 years old. Born in Cali. Degree in Economics from Universidad IFIT in Medellín, 12 years of financial consulting across Colombia, Venezuela, and Panama, the last 3 as an independent operator after a departure from a mid-sized Bogotá firm that is documented in the professional record as mutual but reads, on closer examination, as a quiet firing related to a client compliance issue that was never publicly resolved. The compliance issue is the most important part of the cover. It creates the specific professional wound that makes Sebastián Mora's willingness to do financial work of ambiguous legality plausible. A man with a clean record who appears in Palomino's orbit looks like a setup. A man with a specific stain, not criminal, but the kind of professional failure that closes certain doors and opens others, looks like a man who has found his level. The IFIT degree is real in the cover record. A professor at the university, a cooperating witness, is prepared to confirm having taught Sebastián Mora in 2 courses. The professor does not know the nature of the operation. He knows only that he has been asked to confirm a former student's attendance if contacted, and that the request comes through channels he trusts. Your handler is an agent named Restrepo. Colombian national, 15 years with the DEA's Bogotá office. The best Spanish speaker the operation has, the only person who can pass in the specific social register of professional Medellín, the particular combination of education, regional inflection, and class signifiers that distinguishes the city's business world. Restrepo's instruction on your first meeting, before insertion, is practical and absolute. He says, the Cordoba network recruits educated people. They are not looking for muscle. They are looking for competence in financial engineering, and the people in that world have a very specific way of talking about money, a technical vocabulary combined with a deliberate vagueness about what the money is for. You need to be fluent in both. The vocabulary will get you in the room. The vagueness will keep you there. He pauses. He says, the people you will be working with are not what you expect. They went to good universities. They have families. They live in nice apartments in El Poblado. They have genuinely convinced themselves that what they do is financial services, just for clients with unusual requirements. That self-conception is not performance. It is real. And if you cannot engage with them on the level where they actually exist, you will not last 60 days. You last 11 months. The cost of lasting is something Restrepo could not brief you on, because it had not happened to him, and the only way to know it is to live it. What the Cordoba network actually does. The first thing that distinguishes the Cordoba network from every other criminal organization you have worked against is that the meetings are boring. Not in a cover way. In an actual way. The meetings involve spreadsheets, regulatory frameworks, jurisdictional analysis, the specific technical problem of moving large sums of money across international borders in a way that does not trigger the reporting thresholds of 6 different compliance regimes simultaneously. The people in the meetings are good at this. Palomino is a former banker, 15 years at Bancolombia before he moved into consulting. He has the specific habits of a man who has worked in institutional finance: precision with numbers, intolerance for ambiguity in a contract, the particular irritation that competent people feel when someone wastes their time with imprecise information. He runs the financial side of the network with the same standards he would have applied at the bank. The difference is the source of the funds. The source of the funds is never discussed directly. It does not need to be. Everyone in the room knows where the money comes from. The professional courtesy is to not say it, because not saying it allows the people who are good at their jobs to focus on their jobs. You are, very quickly, good at yours. The structuring work is real and specific, a technical skill that Palomino genuinely needs, and that you genuinely have, because Bishop spent 3 months sourcing a FinCEN expert to brief you until you could do it credibly. The first engagement is a structuring problem across 4 jurisdictions and an 11-day reporting window. You solve it cleanly. Palomino emails you. Good work. Next engagement attached. That email, in the Cordoba network, is the equivalent of a handshake. You report it to Restrepo through the contact protocol. Restrepo confirms. He says, the financial intelligence is exceptional. Keep going. You keep going for 8 months without incident. Then the safe house burns. What 38 days without a handler teaches you? The first week you do what the protocol says. You attempt contact through the classified job listing. You post the risk analyst advertisement twice, 48 hours apart, with a specific sequence in the second paragraph. No response. You do not know, and will not know for 2 months, what happened. What happened is this: the safe house fire was not an accident and was not a cartel operation. It was an internal Colombian police action against a separate narcotics investigation that used the same building without the DEA's knowledge. A coordination failure of such fundamental institutional dysfunction that the post-incident review will consume 6 months and change 3 agency information-sharing protocols. Restrepo was not in the building when it burned. He was in Bogota for a meeting that ran long. He returned to find his extraction point destroyed, his communication protocols inaccessible because the backup communication system was in the safe house, and no way to reach you without using a channel that Cordoba's surveillance capability might intercept. He is trying to reach you. He has been trying to reach you since the morning after the fire. You do not know this. What you know is that for 38 days you have been inside the most sophisticated financial criminal organization in Colombia with intelligence that could end its operations and no means of getting it to anyone who can act on it. You keep working. You have no choice. Sebastián Mora does not vanish because his outside world goes quiet. Sebastián Mora shows up, does his work at the level that earned Palomino's email, solves the problems assigned to him, attends the meetings, produces the analysis. And Cesar watches you. Cesar Villamizar is 52 years old. He has been in the Cordoba network for 14 years. He manages logistics, not financial logistics, physical logistics, the movement of product and personnel, and the specific operational intelligence that the network provides to the production and distribution organizations it finances. He is the network security function, without a title that says so. He told you about the safe house fire on day 1. On day 12, he sits next to you at a team meeting and says nothing in particular. On day 20, he invites you for coffee. On day 34, over that coffee, he says, you look like a man who is solving a problem with limited resources. You say, financial structuring is always resource constrained. He says, I wasn't talking about financial structuring. He drinks his coffee. He says nothing else. You go back to your desk. On day 38, you decide to trust him. What you tell Cesar? You tell him almost nothing. This is the art of it. You tell him enough to confirm what he already suspects, in a way that gives him no information he could use to harm you that he doesn't already have, while opening a channel that might allow you to find a way out of a situation that has no protocol. You meet at a cafe in El Poblado on a Saturday morning. You get there first. You watch him arrive, watch how he scans the room before he sits, the specific operational habit of a man who has survived in dangerous work for a long time by checking exits before he needs them. He sits. He orders. He looks at you. You say, I have a problem. He says, I know. You say, the problem is logistical. A communication channel I relied on is no longer available and I need to reconstitute it without attracting attention. You are telling him you are an operative who has lost contact with your organization. You are not telling him which organization. He could conclude you are DEA. He could conclude you are a competing network's asset, a position that would explain the communication channel and the current silence. He could conclude you are telling him the truth and offering him information about a federal infiltration of the organization he works for. He looks at you for a long time. He says, how long? You say, 38 days. He says, and the work you've been doing for Palomino. You say, has been exactly what it appeared to be. Another silence. He says, I knew about you in month 3. You say, how? He says, I've been in this work for 14 years. I know what a man looks like who is 2 things at once. The financial work is real. The compliance issue at the Bogota firm is documented. But a man with that background and that level of skill doesn't end up consulting for Palomino unless he is either desperate or positioned. You were not desperate. You say, and you told no one. He says, I told no one. You say, why? He is quiet for a moment. He looks at the street. He says, because I have been in this organization for 14 years and I am tired of what it requires of me. And because a man who is positioned rather than desperate is, in my experience, the only person who might eventually be able to offer something I need. You say, what do you need? He says, a way out that doesn't require me to disappear. The conversation lasts 43 minutes. By the end of it, you have the most dangerous kind of asset the DEA can have in the field. Someone inside the organization who knows you are there and is choosing to help rather than burn you, for reasons that are personal rather than institutional. Cesar is not a cooperating witness. He has not been processed, briefed, protected, given a handler, assigned a control number. He is a man sitting across from you in a cafe in El Poblado who has decided, after 14 years of something he is tired of, that you are the door. You are also a man who has been alone for 38 days and has just been offered the only option available. You take it. 60 days with Cesar. What Cesar gives you in the following 60 days is not just a communication channel. He gives you the interior of the Cordoba network, the parts that Sebastián Mora, financial consultant, was never positioned to access. The specific relationship between Andrés Cordoba and the 3 production organizations he finances. The cash flow architecture, not the cleaned version that moves through the front companies, but the raw flow from production to initial processing, where the volumes and routes are documented before the laundering begins. He gives you names, not operational pseudonyms, real names, real addresses, the specific identities of the 12 people who form Cordoba's inner circle and who have never appeared in any DEA intelligence file because they operate below the level of anything the outside world has ever seen. He gives you Andrés Cordoba, not a blurry photograph and a professional biography. Direct testimony, conversations Cesar has witnessed, decisions he has seen made, the specific verbal pattern that a 23-year investigation has been unable to document. Cordoba personally directing the disposition of criminal proceeds. In a court of law, what Cesar can testify to is sufficient for conviction. The problem is that Cesar is not a protected witness. He is not in any system. He has a family, a wife, 2 daughters in university, and the moment Cordoba discovers his cooperation, which will happen the moment the warrants execute, they are all in danger. You tell Cesar this. He says, I know. You say, the protection program requires processing. It requires bringing you in before the warrants, which means the timeline for the operation depends on moving you and your family to safety first. He says, how long? You say, I don't know yet. I have to reconstitute my contact and make the case for the extraction timeline. He says, make it quickly. I've been careful for 14 years. I don't know how much longer careful is enough. Cesar builds you the communication channel, a specific messaging system using a legitimate business email platform, routed through a server configuration he manages, that allows you to reach Restrepo through an address that cannot be traced to the DEA's known infrastructure. It takes him 4 days to build. On day 62 of silence, you send Restrepo a message. Restrepo responds in 3 hours. His first word is, alive? Your first word back is, working. The problem with a way out. What Restrepo tells you over the following 72 hours reconstructs the shape of what happened and opens a new problem. The safe house coordination failure has been reviewed, corrected, and buried in an internal report that will take 2 years to surface publicly. The DEA country office knows you are alive and operational because Cesar's communication channel bypassed every monitored system in the country. Bishop, who has not slept regularly in 62 days, reads your first full intelligence transmission and calls Restrepo at midnight. She says, get him out. Restrepo says, the extraction requires sequencing. If we pull him now, without the Cesar situation resolved, the warrants will execute before the family is protected. Cordoba will know within hours. The family does not make it to the weekend. Bishop says, how long to protect the family? Restrepo says, 2 weeks minimum. Witnesses and family members are a Colombian jurisdiction issue. We need the Fiscalia involved. The Fiscalia moves at the pace of the Fiscalia. Bishop says, we have an agent in the field with no extraction protocol for 2 more weeks. Restrepo says, "We have an agent in the field who has been without a protocol for 62 days and has been running the operation. 2 more weeks is not the risk." Bishop says, "What's the risk?" Restrepo says, "That Cordoba finds out about Cesar before we move the family. You stay in the field. You attend meetings. You produce financial analysis. You have coffee with Cesar twice a week and speak in the oblique vocabulary of 2 people communicating through the surface of a conversation. You are simultaneously a financial consultant who is excellent at his job, an undercover DEA agent building a federal case, and the only person standing between a man who chose to help you and the specific end that the Cordoba network reserves for people who choose wrongly. 2 weeks become 3. On day 99, 37 days after Restrepo's first response, Cesar comes to your desk in the middle of the afternoon. He says, "Today." You say, "Is the family?" He says, "They left this morning. A cousin in Barranquilla. Don't ask me the details." He says, "Cordoba asked me about you yesterday. Not about your work. About you. He asked Palomino when you were first engaged, and then he asked me what I thought of you." You say, "What did you tell him?" He says, "That you were exactly what you appeared to be." He says it without irony. In the context of your conversation, it is the most accurate thing either of you has said. Day 100. Restrepo picks you up from a parking garage in El Poblado at 6 a.m. You get in the car with nothing except your memory of 11 months of financial architecture and 60 days of Cesar's testimony about a man who has never appeared in a federal charge. Cesar is extracted separately, 2 hours earlier, by a Colombian Fiscalia team that Restrepo has spent 3 weeks coordinating. He and his family are in a location that you are not told because operations of this kind work better when compartments hold. The warrants execute at 8 a.m. across Medellin, Bogotá, and Cali. Simultaneous operations involving DEA, the Colombian National Police, and Fiscalia units in 3 departments. Andrés Cordoba is arrested at his home in Laureles. His attorney arrives in 11 minutes, a response time that tells you the attorney has been on retainer for this specific morning for a long time. Cordoba says nothing. He looks at the warrant, hands it back, asks to change his clothes. He changes his clothes. Palomino is arrested at his office, mid-meeting with 3 clients. He tells them the meeting is rescheduling. Professionally composed to the end. Cesar's name does not appear in any public filing. He is referred to in the prosecutorial documents as a confidential human source whose cooperation began 11 months into the investigation. The 11 months places the cooperation in a timeline that cannot be traced to the 62 days of silence or the cafe in El Poblado or a messaging system built on a legitimate business email platform. 41 arrests total. Andrés Cordoba faces 27 federal charges including money laundering, conspiracy, and criminal enterprise. The financial intelligence gathered by one undercover officer over 11 months, combined with the direct testimonial evidence of a confidential source, constitutes the most complete prosecution of a cartel financing operation in Colombian legal history. You give your debrief in Bogotá over 8 days. Bishop shakes your hand on the 8th day. She says, 100 days without a handler. You say, 99 days without a handler. On day 100 I was in Restrepo's car. She almost smiles. She says, how did you hold it together? You say, Cesar. She says, he held it together for you? You say, we held it together for each other. What 100 days costs? The psychological evaluation runs 6 weeks. You see a counselor named Dr. Ospina twice a week in an office in Bogotá that smells like air conditioning and has no window. In the 2nd week she asks, what moment do you return to? You say, day 38. She says, when you told Cesar. You say, when I decided to tell him. Not the conversation. The decision. She says, what about it? You say, I decided based on insufficient information. I decided because I had no other option and because something in the way he moved through a room told me he was a man who was tired of what his life required. That's not protocol. That's not training. That's a read made under pressure by someone who needed it to be right. She says, and it was right. You are simultaneously a financial consultant who is excellent at his job, an undercover DEA agent building a federal case, and the only person standing between a man who chose to help you and the specific end that the Cordoba network reserves for people who choose wrongly. 2 weeks become 3. On day 99, 37 days after Restrepo's first response, Cesar comes to your desk in the middle of the afternoon. He says, "Today." You say, "Is the family?" He says, "They left this morning. A cousin in Barranquilla. Don't ask me the details." He says, "Cordoba asked me about you yesterday. Not about your work. About you. He asked Palomino when you were first engaged, and then he asked me what I thought of you." You say, "What did you tell him?" He says, "That you were exactly what you appeared to be." He says it without irony. In the context of your conversation, it is the most accurate thing either of you has said. Day 100. Restrepo picks you up from a parking garage in El Poblado at 6 a.m. You get in the car with nothing except your memory of 11 months of financial architecture and 60 days of Cesar's testimony about a man who has never appeared in a federal charge. Cesar is extracted separately, 2 hours earlier, by a Colombian Fiscalia team that Restrepo has spent 3 weeks coordinating. He and his family are in a location that you are not told because operations of this kind work better when compartments hold. The warrants execute at 8 a.m. across Medellin, Bogota, and Cali. Simultaneous operations involving DEA, the Colombian National Police, and Fiscalia units in 3 departments. Andrés Cordoba is arrested at his home in Laureles. His attorney arrives in 11 minutes, a response time that tells you the attorney has been on retainer for this specific morning for a long time. Cordoba says nothing. He looks at the warrant, hands it back, asks to change his clothes. He changes his clothes. Palomino is arrested at his office, mid-meeting with 3 clients. He tells them the meeting is rescheduling. Professionally composed to the end. Cesar's name does not appear in any public filing. He is referred to in the prosecutorial documents as a confidential human source whose cooperation began 11 months into the investigation. The 11 months places the cooperation in a timeline that cannot be traced to the 62 days of silence or the cafe in El Poblado or a messaging system built on a legitimate business email platform. 41 arrests total. Andrés Cordoba faces 27 federal charges including money laundering, conspiracy, and criminal enterprise. The financial intelligence gathered by one undercover officer over 11 months, combined with the direct testimonial evidence of a confidential source, constitutes the most complete prosecution of a cartel financing operation in Colombian legal history. You give your debrief in Bogota over 8 days. Bishop shakes your hand on the 8th day. She says, 100 days without a handler. You say, 99 days without a handler. On day 100 I was in Restrepo's car. She almost smiles. She says, "How did you hold it together?" You say, "Cesar." She says, "He held it together for you?" You say, "We held it together for each other." What 100 days costs? The psychological evaluation runs 6 weeks. You see a counselor named Dr. Ospina twice a week in an office in Bogota that smells like air conditioning and has no window. In the second week she asks, "What moment do you return to?" You say, "Day 38. She says, "When you told Cesar." You say, "When I decided to tell him." Not the conversation. The decision. She says, "What about it?" You say, "I decided based on insufficient information. I decided because I had no other option and because something in the way he moved through a room told me he was a man who was tired of what his life required." That's not protocol. That's not training. That's a read made under pressure by someone who needed it to be right. She says, "And it was right."